So this wasn't going to be my first video. My first video was going to be a vlog during a 20-mile walk I was doing. I was a part of a exercise challenge group called Lose It Challenges. It's organized on Reddit by volunteers, and it's a lot of fun. They do this every couple of months, and it's like themed oriented, and you group up into teams, and it's really great. It's just a fun way to kind of get in your steps, keep mindful of what you're eating, and it's just a great challenge. Definitely recommend it. But so I was really excited. I was so excited about the walkathon that was coming up. And I was hyping myself up. I planned out my 20-mile route. I wrote down where I was going to take water breaks, wrote down everything like that. And I got to about this point when I realized, oh, I'm not feeling that great. So that was my first notice that I was really not feeling well, that it wasn't just nerves, that it wasn't just psyching myself out. I got about 8 miles, which is very short of my goal, but because of how sick I was, I am very happy with it, and plus the temperature was crazy. So my original plan was I walked to my mom's, and then we walked back to my house, and I was going to go out later that night just to kind of finish up. But I was already behind, and I was already so sore, so tired. I just took a shower and then crashed. Then the next day, I still was feeling horrible, so I took not one, not two, but 3 COVID tests, and they all came back positive. So I had to go to urgent care, get one of an official one for work to put in for my leave of absence. Thankfully, that went through, and I was just able to kind of stay at home and recover. But in the meantime, I was really bummed about not being able to do the 20 miles. So I am going to do that by my own. I think they're having another one in September. But I might do my own 20 mile before the official one. I do have the route planned, so I will be working on that when I am feeling better. But during the quarantine time, I really had a lot of time, and I decided when I wasn't sleeping to catch up on some of my reading that I had. I like to watch Shaun of Steel, Big T, and shockingly, Cinnamon Toast Ken. He's done a lot of reaction videos to 600 Pound Life. I did not know that until earlier this week, so that was cool to catch up on Cinnamon Toast Ken. But I've been a fan of those channels for a while, and I wanted to try to maybe do my own spin on it. So I decided to read Dr. Nail's book, The Scale Doesn't Lie, People Do. And wow. So this is not going to be an in-depth thing like Savvy writes books. This is going to be a very brief overview, and I'm only going to talk about the first couple of chapters because they're the ones that stuck out to me, and I would frankly just be repeating myself if I did the whole book. So, starting off, I don't know if calling it a book is the right thing. I really do think it's an impassioned letter, a plea. It just doesn't feel complete. And that's because I don't know who the audience for this book is. So I read one of the reviews said that they thought it was too academic. When I was reading it, I really did not think it was academic at all. And I am like, who, besides if you were given this book, who would buy it that wasn't a fan of the show? And I really don't know. So there's a lot of things in here about the issues with obesity and the complications that come with it. However, it doesn't feel like it's written for someone who has the issues. The only parts that do are the diet plan and the exercises, which are at the end. So I'm not exactly sure who this book is written for. It would be easier to say if there were some citations in it or some talk about where he's getting this information from. But there's just not. It's just presented as facts and is defaulting on his title of being Dr. Now. And I don't know who this book was written for. Perhaps caregivers or the enablers so that they could realize the harm that is actually being done to people who are obese or who are bedridden or have really hard time with mobility, because he does seem to go harsh on those in the show way more than other aspects of it. I Perhaps it's written for the enablers to kind of wake them up. I think maybe that's who it's written for. But then it's presented very oddly with the later chapters. So, how I mean that there is absolutely no citations. Let's start off here with this. So, it says right here that 76% of the adult population in the United States is considered obese or overweight. Now, it'd be great to know, when was this book written? When was this statistic found? How? What, where did they find this information? How in date is it? Because I don't know if that's like the past year. I know this book has been written before, but it'd be nice to know like where he found that kind of information, because right now he's just presenting it as fact. And that's great. It probably increased, especially, as the years went on. But I have no basis of saying that, and I have no idea where he found this information from. Same with things like recent studies show that over 180 million children globally have a BMI greater than 30. So it really wouldn't be that horrible to say recent studies such as Jones and Collins, adding some kind of name and date in there so that like people who are curious could back it up. The reason why I'm like, it's a book, but it more of an impassioned plea, because there is none of that argument. It's just saying, no, this is how it is. And that works, but it doesn't. So this book will not convince anyone who has trouble believing in calories in, calories out, or doesn't believe in the BMI, which shouldn't be that many people, but with all of everything that's going on in the world, yeah, there are people who don't believe in calorie in, calorie out. And the way that he says it is that there's no issues that does affect weight. And it's like, no, we know for a fact that salt retention is a thing. Does it cause this? No, but it might cause a couple of pounds. So he doesn't include any of that kind of nuance or anything like that. It's literally just, this is the way things are, and that's that. Which, once again, if you're a fan of Dr. Now, that's fine. But if you're buying this book to learn something, I have a very hard time just believing, even though I know it's accurate, but it's like, that's really what got me on this. So, one of the things that I absolutely did love, though, about this book is this little blurb. We must respect everyone, but first have a sense of self-respect and sense of pride in what we do. We must learn to lift ourselves up, but in the meantime, lift others up with us. We must change our lives for the better, and at the same time, the life of others. We must live by each other's happiness. And honestly, I love that quote. It is such a good quote, and it really does kind of sum up why a lot of people do root for people on the show because we want everyone to have that kind of self-respect, to want the best for themselves. And I don't know, I love this quote. I think it's an amazing one. Like, if I was a Pinterest person, that would be on my Pinterest board. I really like it. So I really do. So always want to give compliments when I can. All right. So moving on to this one. Once again, what struck me about this is it would be so nice if there was any kind of citation, any kind of belief, any kind of proof. Just, and I guess it's just he's not an expert on. He's an expert on obesity, but he's not an expert on obesity in the workplace. Like, that's a whole other field, kind of like I see him working with other people and being able to come to these conclusions, but him just doing it, like, I believe it, but I would love to see the backing behind it, because I think if you didn't have that kind of history, or you didn't disbelieve this, it will do nothing to convince you. So the negative impact of obesity in the workplace is not only related to the increased cost of insurance in obese individuals due to higher utility of diagnostic and therapeutic services, but it is also related to the loss of productivity. Now, productivity, that's a whole study of leadership. But once again, I believe it. I would like something to back it up. And I'm just reading a line, but there is no like evidence throughout the book. If you don't believe me, read it yourself. It's perfectly fine. So that is that one. And moving on to the worst chapter that I have ever read in any sort of weight loss book ever. I think this book would not have made me make this video if it wasn't for this chapter. This chapter was not needed. This chapter was hilarious for different reasons. I'm only going to talk about a couple pages in it, but chapter 4 did not need to exist. So what really brought out this understanding our dietary habits. Okay, so he starts talking about animals. All penguins eat krill, squid, and fish. Pandas eat the stem of bamboo. Therefore, they must live in an environment where bamboo can grow. Now, that is no, because pandas can live in zoos. But more importantly, bamboo isn't their primarily source of, like, shouldn't be their primary diet, but it is, because from what I remember, it's just like a drug to them, and they get hardly any nutritional value from it. They are supposed to eat meat. So it's just like, okay. So that just came out of nowhere, and I was like laughing about that. And then as it continued going down, now this is when it gets real, like, off the chain. So starts talking about how human beings from newborn to infancy have an efficient regulatory mechanism for food intake that prevents them from overeating. I've heard this before, and it's just one of those interesting things. I have, like, heard that. But once again, no backing it up, no studies about anything like that. But what then gets me is we do not witness this in animals. For example, if you leave a cow with an abundant supply of grass, it will only eat a sufficient amount and will not overeat. Likewise, a lion or tiger will hunt and kill their prey and will eat the proper amount and walk away, leaving the remainder behind. This efficiency of their regulatory mechanism for food intake prevents them from overeating and therefore we don't see obese lions or tigers. Now, the issue with this is we do see obese lions or tigers when they are in captivity. We have, I mean, and they're, but it's just, and I do know that like prey animals will stick near predators when, after they eat, because then they're no longer really in danger. But there is nothing backing this up. And there is no nuance. There is nothing, because we definitely see obese animals in the wild. What is that? Now, moving onwards. Oh, yeah. So, like, before, it says they do not overeat. It's just why we don't see obesity in animals or other species. Now, this brings me to two parts of the thing. One, we do see obesity in animals and other species. We do. Usually there's human involvement, but we do see it, which that just blew my mind, because it's like, no, there, we see it. And also, this book is repetitive. I didn't like highlight it, so I'm not gonna probably edit it majorly, but like, he repeats himself a couple times, so like that's an issue with grammar, but like, which is fine, but it'd be different if he cited anything, but he doesn't. So that wasn't even the most outrageous thing in this. So hi, future Alex here. So I was editing and I realized that I mostly did not explain why this page upset me. And it isn't because of anything about the beliefs. It's because, once again, who is this book written for? Because it really does, when I think about it, it doesn't sound like an educational book. It sounds like a book that's mostly just his inner thoughts with science sprinkled in there. Now, like, I did that. I did that during this video when I was talking about pandas, which I was slightly wrong about, and talking about obese animals. I provided no facts. Want to know if anyone catched that. But I didn't provide any citations about the obese animals, and I know it's rare, but you can. So, what got me about chapter 4 is when he said, based on the differences between our eating habits when compared with other species, it clearly indicates that the evolution theory is not applicable. Now, he says that because of the pandas living somewhere where they eat bamboo, and how we don't have a specific diet from human to human, like in other places it's perfectly acceptable to eat bugs. In other areas it's not, but it's one of those kind of things. But then here's where the logic comes in, that just kind of makes me question how he certain findings, because it's like, if this is your logical jump, what? I just can't be on board with it, because this is not what it is. So it is logical to assume that we are created by an intelligent design rather than a byproduct of evolution. Now, the reason why this upsets me is not because of intelligent design. It has, I'm not going to get into it, because frankly, it doesn't need to be gotten into. It is simply just something that's out of my realm of expertise, and frankly, whatever you believe, cool, as long as you don't hurt anyone else, groovy. But why did that have, why did that have to be in this book? And why did it have to be a book that is given to every single person who is on 600-pound life? Because I just, why make divisive statements like that when you're trying to save people's lives? It's just it. And then when I think about some of the episodes, it does make me kind of chuckle because like that one woman who was screaming over the phone, "Do you believe in God? Do you believe in God?" I'm like, well, she clearly didn't read the book, even though he gave it to her. But there is absolutely no reason this needs to be in there. Chapter 4 is filled with kind of that kind of. It just shows this is what he believes, so this is what you should believe, and that's the kind of logic. I can't jump behind that. Like, even though I agree with several things in this book, I don't like how that is presented, and I don't think it's even necessary to be in a book called "The Scale Doesn't Lie, People Do." Like, I don't understand it. And frankly, that's why I say it's an impassioned plea from Dr. Now to people that he wants to treat, which that's fine, but it does explain to me why a lot of people fail. If this is the only resource they're getting, I don't know how I would if I was given this when I was at my heaviest, I would have just shut it and not paid attention to it. Because once again, no citations, nothing. And not even the pictures had citations. So there were pictures in this book. There is absolutely no citations on the pictures. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand why this was included. I think if he had an editor, maybe it would have been better. I think if he received some more third-party input, maybe updated it a little bit to include some up-to-date statistics, that would be better. But given as it is, I just am like, why? Why? All right. So I think that's done a little bit better of explaining than I did it the first time. It's not against intelligent design. It is against the idea of it being talked about in a book like this. And anyway, I hope that everyone has a beautiful day. And yeah.